In my last video, we discussed how important situations are regardless of how talented a player is. And we dove into situations that weren't that great last season that could potentially be better this year and why. But for today's video, we're gonna go in an opposite direction. And today we're gonna talk about some situations that weren't all that bad last year, but I'm concerned for a few reasons why they might not be nearly as good. Does it mean we don't want anything to do with these players? Absolutely not. But it could mean we should be cautious. This one may feel like a little bit of a reach when I say last season was a better situation than what they could have this year, because I'm going to start with Malik Nabers and Jackson Dart. I mean, they lost their head coach midway through the season. Malik Nabers went down with an ACL injury and missed the rest of the year. And now they're getting John Harbaugh, which feels like an upgrade. Believe me, I think the New York Giants are primed for success next year, but I am a little bit worried about these two having huge fantasy performances. I was pretty excited for this hire right when it was announced. John Harbaugh coming to the New York Giants. It was also thought that Todd Monken would be coming along with him as his offensive coordinator. Now, that didn't end up happening. Todd Monken decided to go the head coaching route, and then John Harbaugh decided, let's bring in Matt Nagy, of all people, to be our offensive coordinator. That I don't love. Before becoming the head coach in Chicago, Matt Nagy was the offensive coordinator in Kansas City. Went to Chicago, didn't have a great run, went back to Kansas City, but unfortunately their offense has regressed with Nagy at the helm over the last couple of years. When Nagy came back in 2023 as the offensive coordinator, Kansas City looked solid. They were 9th in yards for his first season back. But over the last couple of seasons, they have dropped from 16th all the way down to 20th. They have not been making progress on the offensive side of the ball. The previous 5 seasons in terms of total offense prior to Matt Nagy coming back under Eric Bieniemy, they were at 1, 6, 1, 3, and 1. This was an offense that was absolutely humming. And even though Patrick Mahomes did have a little bit of a bounce back campaign this season prior to his injury, this offense as a whole the last 2 seasons just has not been nearly as dynamic as it once was. And Jackson Dart had a really solid rookie season. After taking over as the starter, he threw for over 2,200 yards. He had 15 passing touchdowns to only 5 interceptions. He added almost 500 rushing yards on top of it with 9 rushing touchdowns. But Jackson Dart needs to develop as a passer. He's in the right direction, has a great set of intangibles. He's very gifted, but he needs to grow as a passer. I don't know if Matt Nagy is the guy to do that. And then on top of it, they decided to bring in Greg Roman as a senior offensive analyst. Greg Roman has been an offensive coordinator in the NFL for 12 seasons, and he's primarily been the right-hand man to Jim Harbaugh for a lot of that time. He's been the offensive coordinator in San Francisco, Buffalo, went to Baltimore with John Harbaugh for a while, was back with Jim Harbaugh for the Chargers the last couple of seasons. But during his 12 seasons as an offensive coordinator, his offenses have only been inside the top 28 of passing attempts twice. But his teams have been inside the top 15 of rushing attempts every single season. Greg Roman is going to have a pretty big role in helping to shape this offense. And even though he will not be calling plays, to me, it is concerning that they're bringing in an offensive staff that typically over the course of their careers have limited the passing game, which is where Jackson Dart needs to get better. He needs to grow as a passer. And if your offensive staff is limiting his passing attempts, to me, it feels like it's going to be hard for him to get better and better and better. Also, some of that volume disappearing doesn't help from a fantasy football perspective either. Now, Greg Roman has been an offensive coordinator with Lamar Jackson, but Lamar Jackson won MVP awards and finished second to Josh Allen under Todd Monken, not Greg Roman when he was in Baltimore. But when you think about Malik Nabers as well, can he still be a top 12 wide receiver? Yeah, he could, but now he's got a couple of different things at play. If this is an offense that's going to be 28th or lower in passing attempts, that's a ton of volume that Malik Nabers is going to lose out on. On top of it, he's coming back from a huge knee injury, and the last time we saw him was week 18, and he was still in a brace and needing to use a walking cane to get around. Clearly something is up with his knee. So now we've got a couple of reasons why Malik Neighbors may not be the best bet in the world. And while Jackson Dart showed us a lot of promise last season, this might not be the offensive staff that's going to help him reach fantasy football stardom. The Dolphins felt like they needed a change at the head coaching position, and really, I don't think this is all Mike McDaniel's fault for not reaching what were some very lofty expectations after his first couple of years in Miami. The offense as a whole, for the most part, seemed to be very good on the ground the last couple of years, primarily De'Von Achane. And you gotta wonder if a change at the head coaching position now is going to take away some of that offensive superstar power that we just saw. Over the last couple of seasons, De'Von Achane has really put to bed any concerns about longevity or being able to stay healthy in this league for being an undersized running back. He's had over 200 or more attempts the last 2 seasons. And since he's entered the league, he's averaging almost 6 yards per carry. But they decided when they brought in a new head coach that they were going to go with Green Bay's Jeff Hafley, a defensive-minded guy that is now coming over to replace an offensive-minded guy that really is one of the better play callers in all of football. You can just see how excited people were to bring Mike McDaniels in for an interview this year. And the new offensive coordinator in Miami is a name that you're probably familiar with. Bobby Slowik. Bobby Slowik was the offensive coordinator for 2 seasons in Houston before going to Miami to be the passing game coordinator for Mike McDaniels this past season. There could be a positive and there could be a negative here. Let's start with a potential negative. Bobby Slowik, for the 2 seasons that he was the offensive coordinator in Houston, they ranked 22nd and 23rd in rushing attempts. We don't want De'Von Achane to have the ball in his hands less. We want his volume to stay where it's at, which leads me to maybe a positive point. That Jeff Hafley decided to promote from within instead of bringing in a new offensive-minded guy to try and take over. Bobby Slowik, who is the passing game coordinator, probably knows at this point that their best, most dynamic offensive weapon is De'Von Achane. So, good news is, you got a guy that knows Achane and hopefully will likely continuing to build the offense around him, keep Achane more than fantasy relevant for years to come. The negative part about it is this going to be a guy that's going to run the ball enough? But even if you toss out some of those things, they still need to worry about the quarterback position. Is it going to be Tua? Are they going to go after Malik Willis? Are they going to try and make some sort of a trade? Do they go after a Justin Fields? Do they try to get Aaron Rodgers? I don't know what's going to happen with the quarterback position in Miami right now. So because of that, we're kind of left hanging in that situation as well. Because if they don't have a decent quarterback, even though Tua was pretty bad at times, De'Von Achane was still successful even with Tua as his quarterback. Sometimes the grass isn't always greener. We're going to dive into Deebo Samuel in just a second, but before I do that, I gotta highly encourage everybody that's watching right now to check out more of the off-season content. We're even expanding our repertoire a little bit more this off-season, as I've got a brand new live show called Headliners Unfiltered, where I talk about football, everything else going on in the world of sports, and we give you some unfiltered, live, emotional opinions that you're absolutely not gonna wanna miss out on. So check out Headliners Unfiltered, all of our NFL draft videos, rookie videos, dynasty content, fantasy football content in general, whatever it is, watching off-season content will absolutely make you more knowledgeable about the game as a whole. And of course, we are wildly entertaining, so you'll probably have a few laughs and a few smiles along the way. Deebo Samuel is set to hit free agency, but he's also set to hit 30 years old this season. And Deebo Samuel is one of those guys that I feel like year after year continues to be extremely hyped, but doesn't really end up reaching where we would like him to go, even though he's been in some really good situations. His offensive play callers for the 7 seasons that he's been in the league have been Kyle Shanahan and Cliff Kingsbury, considered to be 2 of the better offensive minds in all of football. But only one time in his career so far has Deebo Samuel eclipsed 1,000 yards. And there could be some reasons for that. There have been some injury concerns that haven't allowed him to be on the field nearly as much as he would like. But when you're in offenses with those type of guys calling plays, I do expect a little bit more. And we've gotten some great performances from Deebo, don't get me wrong. He's not a bust. He's not a guy that has been a horrific player. He just hasn't really reached the potential that I feel like he has. In 2025, Deebo Samuel saw the second most targets and second most receptions that he's ever had in a season in his 7 years in the NFL. However, he had his lowest receiving yards in a season so far in his career. And now Cliff Kingsbury is moving on to do other things. And new offensive coordinator David Blau is a guy that you may or may not heard of. If you've watched the fantasy headliners for a while, David Blau gives us nightmares because there is a Thanksgiving Day game a few years ago where Jake listed Kenny Golladay as a sit because David Blau was playing quarterback that day. It was against a tough defense, and the very first play of the game was like a 70-yard touchdown from Blau to Kenny Golladay that absolutely ruined our Thanksgiving that year. But David Blau is seen as a rising star in the NFL. He was looked at by several teams for potentially becoming their offensive coordinator after he worked with quarterbacks this past season. And now he's going to be calling the plays. And even though he's considered a rising star, and I haven't heard anything bad about him, it could still be a learning curve. Your first year calling plays, David Blau could find himself in a position where maybe his offense struggles at times. Maybe he's just trying to learn the ropes and he's trying to figure out exactly how we go about calling plays and how do we adjust and things of that nature. There's a lot of things that go into play. And that's even if Deebo decides to stay in Washington. He could end up elsewhere. But regardless of where he ends up, how is his situation going to get any better than what it has been recently? With guys like Cliff Kingsbury, with guys like Kyle Shanahan, for the quarterbacks that he's played with so far. Last year, Marcus Mariota, he had to play a majority of games because Jaden Daniels just couldn't stay healthy. And maybe Marcus Mariota ended up being the problem last year. But it also wonders, where is he going to go with an elite quarterback that's going to raise him up to where he needs to be? Maybe it's the quarterback position. Maybe he just hasn't played with that type of a quarterback very much yet. We'll monitor it and we'll see where he ends up this offseason. But it's going to take a really good situation for me to love Deebo Samuel again. I need Patriots fans to calm down for a second because I'm sure when Drake May's name popped up on the screen, you probably already lost it. Heck, I might even be paused right now and you might be down in the comments yelling at me for how stupid I am to list Drake May. But let me argue my case and then we can talk. Yes, he was an MVP candidate in 2025. He fell one first place vote shy of being the MVP over Matthew Stafford this season. However, 2026 could be way more difficult. It is a fair argument to say that Drake May struggled down the stretch. He faced some very good teams in the playoffs. He had to face Houston's defense, maybe the best defense in all of football this year, and probably could have won them a Super Bowl if CJ Stroud had just been mediocre in the playoffs. Then he had to face the Denver Broncos on the road in a winter weather game. That's no easy task. And then he got the Seattle Seahawks, also considered one of the best defenses and probably the NFC's best defense in the Super Bowl. And he did not play well. One of the biggest arguments against Drake May for MVP this season was the Patriots' strength of schedule. And when the schedule was put together at the beginning of the season, their opponents had a .429 winning percentage in the year prior of 2024. It was one of the lowest strength of schedules in all of football. But as the season gets started, the NFL does something what they call adjusted strength of schedule. And it takes into account not just what those teams were the year prior, but what they become throughout the season as well. And the Patriots had an adjusted strength of schedule of -2.8. Not only was that the lowest in all of football, but it was inside the top 10 lowest all time since the NFL started doing this. May is now going to have to play a much tougher schedule in 2026. First and foremost, he's got to play every team from the NFC North. It might be the most competitive division in football outside of the NFC West. But he's also got matchups against Denver, Jacksonville, the Los Angeles Chargers, and of course a rematch against the Seattle Seahawks. And there's also going to be a lot of questions about the offensive line after how it played during the playoffs. Will Campbell, I think, is a good offensive lineman. but I don't know if he's going to stick at left tackle. Mike Vrabel already said he will. He made it known that they have no plans to move Will Campbell from left tackle, which it could end up working out. He is only 22 years old. He's on the younger side. He's struggled greatly, and he's going to learn from those struggles. But at the end of the day, if Campbell doesn't play extremely better than what he played in the playoffs, they are going to have to move him. And if they don't account for a potential move, and if they don't set their depth up on the offensive line to have to potentially move him, we could see some struggles again in 2026 from that group. And they cannot do that against a schedule like this. So Headliner Nation, let me know down in the comments below, who is a player that was set up for success in 2025, but you're wondering if they are going to be as successful in 2026 because of the environment and the situation they are now in. And do you agree or disagree that Drake May could end up seeing a down performance after what we saw from him in 2025? Let me know down in the comments, but more importantly, please interact with the video in some way, shape, or form. It's free, it's easy, and it helps keep our videos rolling during the off season when views aren't nearly as good as we would like. Hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, hype the video, turn on the bell notifications, whatever it may be. Any interaction goes a long way. Stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll catch you on the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.
Analytics off the chain, other channels not the same. Jake and Kyle, you know the name. Headliner Nation, we